Why? Why is never the right question. But I was where I was. Why? What am I gonna do? Fear, blah, blah, blah. And then I got done crying and I thought, oh, I'm forgetting I'm a child of God. I
Mm.
am God's most beautiful child, and so are you. Individually, we are each that blessed child.
Welcome to our podcast. Today, I'm honored to introduce our special guest, Linda Silberman. Linda is a survivor of childhood trauma and has dedicated her life to healing and spiritual growth. With a background in transcendental meditation and apprenticeships with indigenous shaman and medicine women, Linda guides others in reconnecting with their intuition and deepening their relationship with spirit. Join us as we explore her inspiring journey and wisdom. So, Linda Silberman, welcome to my show. I feel very honored having you here, honestly. Your energy is amazing. Tell me all about you. What do you do? You were recommended to me by a friend and a friend that I hold very dear. So, what is it that explain to my audience what you do?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, what do? I do nothing. Uh, I That's not true. I am very passionate about healing trauma, healing ourselves, and deepening our spiritual practices. And I had a very unusual upbringing in the sense that I was introduced to transcendental meditation when I was a very young woman. I'm a young girl. I was 10. My mother wanted to meditate because the Beatles were doing it and she thought it'd be a great way for her to lose weight. But she took me through my sisters through about 17 different religions by the time I was 17. So I'd already been through all sorts of mostly Christian based religions by the time I was 10. And I just remembered that feeling when I meditated, once I had a mantra and learned how to ground and center myself, that all the answers started coming through for me. That it was just this deep connection. And then the religious aspects of it, I could just see the oneness of all of the paths that were just leading towards spirit. And my childhood was filled with a lot of trauma because it was so unconventional. And as I was doing my recovery from PTSD, working with therapists, I was looking for alternatives, such as, I tried medicine, I tried traditional therapy, I tried drinking in a way, you know, just acting out, not really staying in touch with my center. And then once I started studying with some indigenous, the first shaman I studied with, his name is John Two Birds, and he was from the Shoshone tribe, and he was in New Mexico. And once I started studying with him, I received all these other teachings of how to hold space for others, how to be in ceremony, how to honor the elements. And in his tradition, there was Christianity brought in the sense of how the Catholics came and indoctrinated the Native American cultures in Mexico, specifically in the 1600s when they started arriving, the Spanish. So there was this mix of Christianity, just a little bit, but with all these Native American elements. So what I do now, I'm a drum carrier, and I work with clients one-on-one or in groups, and I hold shamanic journey workshops, which is where I drum. We'll do 3 series of drummings where the clients are in repose and just receiving the drumming and going on an adventure, real or imagined. It doesn't really matter. I have a singing drum, so all sorts of tones and sounds come out, images come out. And then when I call everyone back, we sit and we write of what the experience was. That's about a 20-minute session. And we write, and then we start sharing pieces of what we received, because in the indigenous ways, as we're out of our bodies, everyone is receiving parts of the story. So it's my gift is being able to standardize a process so that we can step into other realities without any sort of medicine or herbal or any sort of psychotropic drugs, and reattach ourselves to our spirit, our inner spirit, our core, and deepen our connection with our intuition, with our channel, so that we're able to remember who we are. And in the 3 rounds, it's typically we start in the lower worlds, and then the middle worlds, and then the upper worlds. And we receive messages for ourselves, our families, and then our communities. And so my workshops are typically 4 to 6 hours, depending on how many participants, with a break between the second and third rounds. And then I also do soul retrieval. I also hold medicine circle, and we call it medicine circle in the indigenous tradition, so that everyone, it's just collecting ourselves together, calling in the ancestors, the directions, and essentially just sharing our stories of who we are, where we've come from, and allowing this deep healing to begin. Because we carry not only our own trauma, but once we start healing trauma, we're able to start healing our ancestral trauma. And it's a passion of mine so that we can live in our heads without so much noise, and for peace.
Right. I have so many questions. You said so many things. I have questions and questions. Very first question. Very first question. What is a drum? You said you were a drum holder or a drum
A drum carrier.
carrier. Sorry, drum carrier.
Mhm.
So what does that mean exactly? How do you become a drum carrier?
Well, I apprenticed with John Two Birds for about 5 years in person, and I was gifted a drum. And sometimes there are spontaneous drum circles in the worlds of drummers. And what we discovered was that when I sat with my drum, it was intended only for spiritual work. There was just something that shifted. And so Two Birds said, "You're a drum carrier, you carry that drum, and you hold circle." And so with that instruction, that's what I did. And so there are certain trainings for pipe carriers in the Native American traditions. So this is just another path of service to the community.
Perfect. And what is a singing drum as opposed
So,
to what?
yeah, well, I can't really explain it, quite honestly, but what happens with my drum, or as others are experiencing my drum, it has a tone. And while I'm drumming, I typically go into trance as I'm just drumming. And what others experience are multitudes of tones or songs, or there's an energy that you can feel with visions come. It's as if it's a singing ancestor, is just what starts coming through. I can't explain it. I've tried changing drums, and it's like this drum is the drum that I'm supposed to drum. It's just got a lot of
That's
tones.
beautiful. Beautiful. So you say that when people come in to do a workshop with you, they sit through the drumming and then they get intuitions or they go to a very high place where you may otherwise in circles of what's mushrooms and all the other kind of things that people take to get to a certain place. Are you saying that the drumming can take you there as well?
Yes, that's what I'm
Are you
saying. Is
wow.
it simply with the drum. Now, I have been trained in other medicine forms with different shaman, but I feel very passionately of let's start with just the drum and where we are to see if there's another element, to see where we are. And then if there is a calling, like with ayahuasca, for example, I have never had a calling. Mother ayahuasca has not called my name. So I've not pursued ayahuasca. uh, Medicines call us. And if there's a calling, if you have a dream that, oh, I'm sitting in ayahuasca, then Mother Ayahuasca is calling you. The Mother Marijuana can do that. Mother Mushrooms can do that as well. But it is a calling. So with the drum, I feel it's best to find where we are. Let's see where you are and let's see what's calling you. Let's see what the drum brings to you. Typically, when I start off, I'll encourage the participants to have a setting in nature as their safety spot, like to do some active visualization, right? So that we're putting ourselves in a setting in nature that feels comfortable and familiar. And then I'll begin drumming and encourage participants to close the eyes, be relaxed, deep breathing. So it's almost as if there's like a guided, it's not a guided meditation, but it might start off as that, just so that I can see where everyone is going. And in the Mayan tradition, because I've studied with Mayan shaman as well, in the Mayan tradition, I'm called a world bridge walker. I'm level 9. They have Mayans have all these numbers and symbols, and I'm dyslexic, so I get a little confused with all this stuff. But I've been told I'm level 9. The shaman I've been working with for years here north of Taos, he's a level 10. So I'm like, well, it sounds like a pretty good number. I'm happy being a 9. And
You're up there. You're really up
up
there.
there. And a gift I've always had is being able to leave my body, but be able to stay firmly attached here to this planet. So once I started understanding what a world bridge walker is, it's being able to walk between the worlds. So while I'm drumming and the workshop is happening, and then when we come back and start sharing, I have been on the journeys outside of my body with you as well. So what will happen going to sharing is that, let's say someone is with a whale and they're swimming and they're having this experience in the waves. I'll come in and say, oh yes, but you've forgotten about the eagle that doesn't live near this ocean that swooped down and like, oh my gosh, yes, the eagle picked me up and took me to da 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 da. So it's one of those gifts that I have to be able to help reconnect with our spirit guides, with our animal guides. The animal medicine is very important. Animal, I can go on and on about that, but to be able to bring back this information to this 3D world that we're all sitting in right now.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. So how many people do you typically have during a workshop that you are so
Ooh,
connected with?
I like 10. I have had up to 20, but what I find with larger groups is that some people feel less comfortable leaving their body when they're surrounded by a lot of other people. And I really do encourage people to leave their body because I'm the anchor for them. I
Mm.
can pull back, I have a callback. And then certainly at the end of the 3 rounds, and once we've completely finished, I make sure everyone is back in their body before we get any car keys out. Nobody's driving because some people can be so far out of their bodies, they don't really know how to come back in. So I like a smaller group just so that we can have deeper conversations as to their experiences. And then as we get more and more experience leaving our bodies, having the shamanic journey, others learn are receiving messages for others in the group as well. So it's a beautiful way of sharing and being participating with others too. So the smaller, not tiny, tiny, but medium size. I have had an opportunity to do it for a large group, up to 50 people, but I just felt like it was just too many people. There's too much going on. It's like being grounded with a flock of seagulls overhead constantly flying. So like a
Yeah.
smaller group.
I would imagine with 50 people, even 20, I'm thinking even 10. I mean, for you to be so connected with each one that you can be with each one while they're going through their journey, that would be pretty awesome. I'd say it'd be pretty difficult in my point of view, but you're able to do it with 10, okay, with 20, but 50, I can imagine it must be overwhelming to have that
Eh,
many to worry about.
50's too many. 50's too
Yeah,
many. But I
yeah.
love drumming. I love the medicine of it, and we had a wonderful gathering nonetheless. So,
So let's say I've been through a trauma and I come to your workshop. I'm trying to understand how I would be feeling. I'd come in, I sit down, I'm listening to the drums, and I am then transported into wherever. And how's that going to heal my trauma, what I'm going through?
well, healing from trauma certainly is part of what I do. My experience with trauma was that I had no idea who I truly was. And from my abusers, I had taken over their dialogue in my head. So the inner critic was so alive and had so much, just took up so much space in my brain that I couldn't even hear spirit because I was not connected with my true self. So with the shamanic journey, what I hope people, because when typically in the first round, I encourage a series of inquiries, especially when spirit guides are coming forward or animals are coming forward. And one of the techniques I use is I encourage whatever's coming forward, prove to me that this is not my imagination and reveal yourself to me three different ways that I wouldn't expect, that were unexpected. And perhaps a raccoon shows up and then turns around and puts on a top hat and starts playing a guitar. Like
Wow.
that was a fun little way that my imagination is just sitting ready to receive the vision and something that's I'm not actively imagining. So it really is about training our brains to understand what's coming from spirit and knowing what the truth is. So I encourage this, after we feel confirmation that this spirit animal has shown up and is showing me three different ways and suddenly starts walking on a top rope, could just bring its clan around. It could do all sorts of different things, right? It's showing up. So then I encourage, tell me, show me where truth is in my body, similar to like a muscle testing, you know, as to it's having the animal spirits, and I am just using them as an example, having the animals prove to you that they're telling the truth. And so I'll say, raccoon, tell me a lie. Raccoon, tell me the truth. Raccoon, where do I feel this in my body? So there is an active engagement in our mind's eye as we're listening to the drum. And some people don't have anything show up and they feel as if they've failed and then start wandering off in their world and then are suddenly picked up by a dragon or some other mystical being, wherever, whatever is going to resonate with them at a subconscious level. But it's turning off the inner dialogue of judgment so that we can feel in the body and ultimately feel it in the gut, in the stomach of where the truth really is, in our solar plexus, in our heart, in our throat, in our mind's eye, and realigning that so that we know truth. Because our minds, I often describe, are like kittens playing with a ball of yarn. And that's the nicest way I can say it, of yes and no, yes and that, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm blah, blah, blah. And for myself, pulling myself out of Western thought and into my body, connecting with spirit, is the ultimate healer. Because then once I'm able to open up that channel and really understand the information that's coming through, then I can be discerning with my thoughts. And as I always say to my students, don't believe anything you think, nothing, because that is where we get in trouble, is believing all of these thoughts. And as we know, thoughts are led by the ego and not in our core of to our true beings.
So who should you believe in? Yourself, your heart, when your heart speaks, or how do you discern, what you're always thinking you need an answer? Who do you believe? You don't want to believe your mind. How do you, come across an answer for whatever you need to
Well,
know?
I always question the question, and I ask if it's something that I need to know right now. Is this, and I always tell myself everything's on a need to know basis. So sometimes I spend most of my time without knowing. For myself, it is an ultimate trust, having trust in spirit, the guidance that I'm receiving. But I know that when I'm receiving something in my head that's like the back and forth, the kitten, that that's not truth. But when I feel it in my gut, or if my heart is pulling me forward, then I know those are truths in my body that I can trust. And then I'll bring my brain along for the ride, because sometimes my brain doesn't want to agree with my gut or my heart. Right.
Usually that's the case. Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
So you had ADHD as a child,
PT.
or I'm sorry, PTSD.
That's
Okay,
okay.
sorry. And what was the traumas? What are the traumas that you went through?
Well, I've been through a lot of, I was raised in an alcoholic family. My father was a violent drunk who beat my mother horribly. There was sexual trauma from my father and my grandfather. Uh, there was physical abuse. Once my father left, there was physical abuse. My mother just perpetuated the violence because that's what she knew from her. It was her father who molested me, my grandfather. And so she hadn't recovered from her pain. And my family is also immigrant. My mother's side of the family, my mother was first generation born in the United States from Italy. And so having that real intense Italian background where men are worshipped and women were worthless was a lot. And then my mother in her own recovery, that's where her spiritual practice of taking us through all these different religions, which I found fascinating, like from a little kid. But for my sisters, that was very, very upsetting for them because there was no regularity, right? It was just like going. And so there was physical abuse from my mother. There was psychological abuse from my mother as well, and emotional abuse as she was growing and doing her best, raising three kids. And she really did so many tremendously wonderful things. I'm not here to blame my mother. She absolutely did her best. And it was during the 1970s and women getting their own freedom, their own voice, their first credit cards. I mean, for Pete's sake, women have been, oppressed for so long. So as she was emerging, trying to bring this independent spirit forward, it was not traditional. I had a very non-traditional childhood, not only with just the immigrant parents, but the diet we ate polenta for breakfast, and the kids, everybody's eating oatmeal. We just were different. We were the different kids. So that was the bulk of my
That's
trauma.
that's pretty heavy trauma, and you
Yeah.
were able to, I don't know if you ever totally overcome things, but you were able to turn your life around with all of this work, and that's pretty amazing.
And I had music as a child. I started playing piano at 3. So music was always a safe place for me. And my sisters, we sang together and we were performing children. So that was a safety as well. And we know the healing powers of
Mhm.
vibration. And then, it was interesting. When I was 18, Mother got involved with Unity. And that was the first time I had an outer body experience with a practitioner. I was on a massage table and he did a laying of the hands on my head. And I flew out of my body with someone else, guiding me. And that was really the first time I ever felt freedom in my life, like true freedom. But I knew something was wrong with me. I chose a profession. I'm a classically trained chef. I graduated from the Culinary Institute of America. I
Wow.
really had structure because it was very militaristic in the sense of when I went to school, it was only 25% female. And the fact that it was so regulated and precise really helped me too with the chaos of my childhood. And I realized that I was drinking too much and I was spending too much money in my 20s. And so before I was like 26 or 27, I started some therapy. That's when I was like, I think I need therapy. And that was before PTSD was really even talked about. So in the 1980s, I was diagnosed with PTSD and worked with an incredible therapist who did a lot of alternative things with meditation. And of course, John Bradshaw and the family really helped me understand things, to grasp the understanding. But once I started a medication path, like it just wasn't working for me. There was still something, I just wasn't healing enough. And did deep tissue massage, raw feet, like all those things we do to get things out of the body. And it was progressive over time, certainly. But working with the shaman was the thing that brought me the most relief, because it's so founded in the earth and in nature. And when I can be very grounded, then I feel a sense of safety and security.
So when you started with the shamans, did you do medicine or did you just do with the drumming or did you do everything?
He had 30 apprentices on his land. And the way I was guided to him it was all mystical how it all unfolded. I was driving a Volkswagen bus. I had cashed out my stock from Starbucks. I worked for Starbucks years and years ago, and I just was bought a Volkswagen bus and just started driving through the desert with a girlfriend. And we stopped, and I had been a vegetarian for 7 years up until that point. And we stopped at like a Wendy's parking lot, and she was very vicious. She was like, "Why are we here?" And I'm like, "I have no idea why we're here." And a woman approached us, and she was half Native American, half indigenous from Australia. She had like this double whammy, sort of like powerful. We were in Santa Fe,
Okay.
and it's funny to me now that it's all happened in New Mexico so many years ago. But we were in Santa Fe, and we met this woman, And I said to her, I said, I think I need to eat a cheeseburger. And I was like kind of
Wow.
horrified. I need to have a cheeseburger? And I'm like, Spirit's telling me I need a cheeseburger. And she was like, go get a cheeseburger. I'm calling John Two Birds. I'm supposed to take you there. And I was like,
Wow.
we weren't doing anything else. So I went and got a cheeseburger and got fries for my friend who was traveling with us. And together in my VW bus, we headed to his land, which was probably 7 hours away from where we started off. And
Wow.
then we arrived, and this woman was, she was just like this catalyst. She was called to him, and said she was called to bring me to him. And then when he met me, he said, oh, I've been waiting for you. And it was just wild. There were no cell phones. It was just like all this wild, like, transference of energy. So the first night that I slept on the land, I was in my bus, and in the morning, all the apprentices gathered around his coffee table, his breakfast table. He drank coffee and smoked cigarettes, and we shared our dreams. And he would ask each person, "What did you dream last night?" And when he got to me, I said, "Well, I did not dream. I did not sleep." And he said, "What was your experience?" And I said, "All I couldn't sleep because of all the singing." And he said, "Singing? What singing?" And I said, "The ancestors." And I felt like I was just like lifted out of my body. And I just kept hearing all these ancestors singing. And I I just told him that. And then he switched places with people. He moved everybody around the table, and he put me next, and he said, "Here's where you're going to sit." And after, we would have sweat lodge, we would have ceremony, we would have pipe ceremony, we did calling in spirits, we did all of those traditional things, drumming. And then my job, he would bring me like packets and packets of things to read. And he would say, you read all of this. And then he would take me on walks and just have all this one-on-one
Wow.
time with me. And at the time, he had 7 women wives, as they were called. And I was like afraid that I was there to be a woman wife, which is not something to be. And I think by the 3rd or 4th day, he said, don't worry, you're not here to be a woman wife. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. Because I didn't know what I got in my, just kind
Right.
of come meets with this woman I met in a Wendy's parking lot. It was all very esoteric and wild. But we had a great relationship, and my mother hated him. She was like, what are you doing with that? I was like, Mother, this is just another form of their religion. She didn't want to hear that. But anyway, so I don't know if I answered your question, but it was pretty wild. But
Yeah.
it helped deepen those things. And then, while I was on the property, there were people preparing for Vision Quest. And in the traditional Vision Quest, what would happen is that you slowly start, for 30 days beforehand, you start decreasing your food intake. And then on the 30th day, you go into your spot in nature, you put a cornmeal circle around yourself, you call in spirit, and you stay there for 3 days. And
Wow.
so all sorts of big things. And this is in the wilderness. It's 7,777 feet in the property where he was located. It was just, courage. It was trusting. It was learning to be in touch with spirit, and really deepening the practice of connection to earth and ourselves.
No animals came to you in your around you, being in this deserted place. You were not
Oh,
afraid?
oh no, and no, It's so interesting. Several times in my life, I've had wild dogs come to me. I'm a cat lady. I mean, obviously, I'm wearing all the leopard and all the things. I'm a cat lady. I just can't help it. But I've had situations where wild dogs will come and protect me when I'm out doing this kind of work, either in vision questing. There was one experience I had when I was exploring the Mayan ruins by myself on this tiny little island called Isla Mujeres, which is across from Cancun. And there are Mayan ruins
Yes.
southern tip there. So I was staying at this beautiful place, and I would have wild dogs come and walk with me every morning and then sit with me while I did my meditation. And then I was in Canyon de Chelly, again, doing vision quest by myself, wild dogs appearing, staying by my side or my vehicle to be with me while in this practice. It's as if just to let me know that I am in a safe place. So I haven't had any, no, I mean, I haven't had any vicious animals come. Certainly, I have animals come in the non physical world, but
Not in the physical.
not in the no bears, no mountain lions. But when I have been in nature and I've had callings to like know how to fight off a mountain lion, I look it up or it's like pay attention to mountain lions.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, they're
So
scary.
how what do you think, why do you think you had to go through such a difficult life in your youth?
Hmm.
Do you think it made a difference in what you're doing now, or was there a reason? Because I mean, we always learn, right, from
Mm.
childhood, and then it brings us to a place. What do you think? Because you went through one heck of a difficult childhood,
Yeah. Yes.
very
Uh,
traumatic.
yeah. I always felt like mother used to say that I was the child that came out with a clipboard and a pen and to organize things. And I was, because there was so much happening in my family of origin at my birth with the violence of my father's drinking. What happens with small children who are born in tremendous abuse, they often are very silent. And I was a baby that didn't cry, that didn't, they learn how not to have their needs met because there's so much chaos happening around them. And on my deep reflections as to why, I really have such a strong connection with my sisters who were twin, identical mirror image twins. And I say were because one sister passed away a few years ago, cancer. And so I only have the one living sister now. And I really feel as if that I was brought here as a helper. And I've had to look at certainly my codependency as well and make sure that I'm not behaving now in a codependent way because I learned that from such an early age of how to get my needs met that were not healthy. But I really feel I was put here as a helper. So sometimes I'll call myself an earth hostess or a spiritual EMT. I have clients that are called to me who are in deep crisis and have simply forgotten how to breathe or how to be in connection with their own breath and to heal this trauma. I am the last of my family's bloodline. My sisters and I took a vow when we were young women to not have children because of the violence that my mother, we all endured. My sisters went through their own trauma as well, that we didn't want to perpetuate this bloodline. Like we were okay, let's let it die out.
Hmm.
And I told my sisters and my mother from a very young age, I'm not coming back here anymore. So, like, I don't want to reincarnate in this family. No offense. Like, I love you all. Let's all be cats or move to a different planet, or let's think of something different. Let's just be beams of light. Let's
Mm.
change dynamic. But this DNA that we've come in with, it needs healing. So I feel very connected with my ancestors, especially my great aunt Mamie, who was the matriarch of the family after my great grandmother passed away. And she was very psychically involved, read tea leaves, sold everything. You come to her house, she was an advisor. All the Catholic priests would come, and she was just an influence. And when she recognized that I had psychic abilities and a strong intuition, she taught me how to read tarot cards and tea leaves at a very young age, but warning me to never read for the family, which I think is
Mm.
good. And I never have. And I think it's just the helper nature that I have.
Also, I'm thinking that at this time, a lot of us have incarnated here to help the humanity move to the level that we're supposed to go to. I think perhaps that's also the reason that you're here. Also, I have read somewhere that souls sometimes take birth into families that are like your family, that the DNA is so much trauma that then it needs to be shut down. So they have to incarnate, go through all of that, and figure out how to just shut that down and not to repeat. So I guess that's what you were saying, that that's probably has been. Now my question then is, did your sisters go through the same type of trauma that you went through?
They had their own trauma. There were certainly similarities, but because they were identical twins and always together,
Hmm.
it's hard to molest a child that's always with their sibling. So I was an easy target for my father and my grandfather, in my opinion. But certainly they have their own traumas as well, and worked on doing their own recovery, and have what's interesting about identical mirror image twins is that they're the same and yet they're opposite. One was right-handed, one was left-handed, one liked opera, one liked free jazz, very, very polar opposites and yet very much the same. And so my sister who passed away had found her solace in art and turned to art and was able to paint and work through a lot of her trauma. And of course, my sisters and I each have had great therapists. And my other sister turned towards music and became a singer songwriter and started really doing her deep healing with her music, and then in her faith as well, in her spiritual practice. So we all had worked our best, really, and still working to heal that trauma from beyond. But I definitely want to agree with you. A message I receive all the time is that we're here to evolve the human species. And if I can raise my vibration, heal this trauma, heal the past, come to peace with it, be able to talk about it and share stories about it without being re-triggered, and to process grief and to go through these deep emotions to understand who I am, that's helping us all. Like the more healing I do for myself, I know it is part of an evolutional practice. And I always say to myself, like, we're here to evolve. This is an evolving moment. We can evolve past the pain body. So I'm glad you brought
Well,
that up.
thank you. So I mean, I believe exactly what you're saying, that I have to heal myself for for everyone to heal. It has to be me first. And when I heal, but how does that, I mean, can you explain that to the audience? How does that work? If I
Mm,
heal myself and I heal, why does that work? Why is because right now, what we are all going through is fear, right? There's a
mm,
lot of fear out there. And how, and then we're trying to, that's why I call my podcast Quest for Peace, because of
mm.
all the turmoil and fear and everything that's going on outside. How do we bring ourselves to this place of peace? Uh, to this place of, someone told me, be in the eye of the storm, like be in that quiet place where the eye usually is. There's nothing happening and the storm is all around you. How does that help for me to get to know myself better, to go inwards and heal myself? How does that help everyone around me?
You know, when you're driving on the freeway and people are zooming past and they're not aware and there's road rage and then suddenly you're caught up in it and you're all like that kind of raging, unhealed, projecting out energy is felt by everyone.
Mm,
And the opposite's the same. And I had to teach myself how not to have road rage because back in the day I was driving a Volkswagen bus and everybody really was angry at me because I was going as fast as I could. I mean, 55 was really flying up some of these mountain passes. Like, I'm sorry. And I would listen to subliminal CD cartridges, cassette players of forgiveness and letting go because I could feel
mm,
myself taking on this rage of others and it was out of my control unless if I put like a Porsche engine in the van. Like there was no way it was going to go any faster. So I knew I had to deal with my own rage, my own anxieties that I'm picking up from others and perpetuating. So it's it's in the smallest movements when I'm able to find my center and my peace that it ripples out and others feel calm and peaceful around me, maybe without even knowing why. There might not be a language for it. There's a calmness and just it's a vibration. Everything is vibrational in our universe. And so there's just a vibration. And when that anxiety, that cortisol, that overworked mind, thinking, fear, anger, rage, when that's dialed down and the peace is allowed to return, that's the ultimate lesson and and what I can do. And I don't do it consciously. I have my bad days. I have days when I'm like, who thought this was a great idea for me? You know, like who thought? And it's so funny because I had something happen in my life about 4 months ago. A situation was changing in my life. And I remember I completely went fetal. I went fetal. I did child pose for about 24 hours, which was like, oh, why? Why is never the right question. But I was where I was. Why? What am I going to do? Fear, blah, blah, blah. And then I got done crying and I thought, oh, I'm forgetting I'm a child of God. I
mm,
am God's most beautiful child, as so are you. Individually, we're each that blessed child.
mm,
So when I'm able to come back to, well, I just don't know what will happen next. I get to be in the curious space. I get to see how things are going to unfold. That moment of everything's on a need to know basis. I'll write that down for myself. What do I need to know now? Oh, that's something in the future. That answer will come later. And
mm,
slowly bite-sized pieces and not getting caught up in the drama of it all because that's the trauma is reawakening that drama and then putting me on a cycle of chaos
mm,
is
mhm.
and of course
Yes.
meditation and practice having to practice. I'm no yogi, but I know child pose. I know that I need to be on the floor, just like let's just get child pose. Let's just do one posture. It doesn't have to be an athletic. Let's just shift it and let's just be in the moment. And bringing it
Mhm.
back to the present is a practice, because when I find my thoughts going kitty wonky, this and that, my higher self will say, oh, that's past. Oh, that's the future. Oh, that's in the past.
Mhm.
And when I'm able to remove myself, remove my identity from my thought, right? I'm not identifying with the thought that's coming up, the fear, the pain, the anxiety. When I'm not identified with it, then I'm able to have a clear vision of what it is. Oh, that's a pain that needs to be healed. Oh,
Mm.
that's an algae in my heart from when did that start? Then that's the time to worry and going into deeper healing. We're like onions, we do certain levels of
Yes.
healing, then time happens, and then we
Yes.
pause, and then we can go deeper.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. It's true. It's just being in the moment, being here, being grounded. That's important. Do it now. Surrender everything. Like just surrender whatever is going to supposed to happen tomorrow. We don't know. So many of us worry so much about what is going to happen in the future. We come up with so many scenarios that could maybe will never happen. But we're always worried about thinking about this and what if nothing like that happens? What if something beautiful happens? What if we just let it go and let God?
Yeah,
And let's just see where universe takes you, where your destiny is taking you, and we are always
yeah,
safe,
yes,
right?
yeah. And that's the beautiful meditation. I am safe.
I am safe. Yes. That is beautiful.
As we're doing this recovery work, we have been ignored for thousands of years. I don't eat apples because of Eve, and Eve being blamed for all this bullshit. I'm sorry, because, oh, she took a bite of the apple. Like, it's like blaming. Women have been
Mhm.
blamed for eons. So that recovery, I think that I am safe, I'm protected, I'm a child of God, is some of the biggest work that I can do for myself.
Wow. Yes. Beautiful. So, what would you advise everyone, women or men, uh, who are facing trauma, who are facing this fear? What would you recommend to them to do to help them get out of the space that they're in?
Mm. Well, trauma is no joke. And I think even post COVID, we all have trauma of
Hmm.
some levels. I really believe in working with qualified people, especially around childhood trauma, abuse. I think there's more sexual and violent abuse, trauma that needs to be healed. The first step, I think, is having the courage to even recognize that this is beyond me and I need help. I need to work with someone. There are so many great books out there. Gabor Mata may not be everyone's cup of tea, but he really does understand trauma, and just having the intellectual understanding that something is happening that's not in harmony emotionally, right? To really just recognize there are two halves of our brain. We have been indoctrinated in a very masculine brain celebrated society, so that when the divine feminine brain or our emotional or intuitive or creative side needs to be expressed, it's not honored as much as the masculine brain. I can make money and go build, men are pinnacle, the divine masculine. The divine feminine is more receptive and being open. and healing, but recognizing in the self that there's something might need some attention, and it may be scary because it's in the unknown. And as we know with the divine feminine, it's all completely unknown. The divine feminine is the great mysterious. Think of the fluid that the baby is in when we're carrying children. Like, it is mysterious what's happening. We can hear things, but we don't see. We got an ultrasound, but we don't know exactly what's going on in there. Fluid.
Mhm.
So allowing ourselves the space and the courage to explore what's really coming up, because the reactionary responses, the fear, the rage, the responding in a way that is not kind, right, to a loved one, when they ask a simple question, that's a clue. Like, in reflection, it's like, why did I say something like that? Oh, maybe there's something deep here that's asking. So it is having the courage to do some inquiry. I do believe in working with good therapists to know. It's because there are so many psychological things that happen to us. And then a commitment to rewiring our neural pathways by binaural beats. Mushroom medicine under advisement in small micro dosing has proven so well. If that feels too esoteric, there's certainly ketamine. There are other things that can be done to help us rewire. EMDR. I've done all these things. EMDR, like, how can we find the way to get our brain connecting so that it's not reactive in such a traumatic way? And then really having the courage to face the pain.
Yes.
And of course, the love, because then it's opening up to the inner child and welcoming these little children back into our hearts.
That's lovely. Or they could come in to one of your workshops
Oh, yeah.
and see where that goes. Well,
Workshop.
so how does someone get in touch with you, or if they want to come to a workshop, what should they do?
Well, let's see. I haven't really put together my workshop schedule for 2025 yet. I did a big tour of the East Coast last fall and I had 11 stops in 5 weeks. It was really a
Wow.
lot. It was awesome. I have websites under development right now, lindasilberman.com and lindathelightworker.com. I don't believe I'm going to be traveling for any workshops, so I'll be holding workshops only in New Mexico.
Okay.
So once I have a plan, I'll have that up on the website as it develops.
Wonderful. And do you do one-on-one sessions online, perhaps?
I do one-on-one. Yes, people
Okay.
can book privately with me. And of course, I have been flown to different places to hold workshops for different groups or small groups as well. And that's always a lot of fun too. So,
Yes, it sounds amazing. Perhaps we will, one day work with you here at Infinite Love at our center. I'm very excited to see how that can work out. Well, thank you very much for being here. It was so enlightening. I learned so much. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will have you here soon.
oh, I sure hope so. And thank you again for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. It's really great to get to know you better too.
Quest for Peace, a podcast about navigating outer chaos with inner harmony. Whether you're seeking solace in the midst of life's challenges or simply curious about the profound connection between inner and outer peace, the Quest for Peace podcast is your guide on this transformative expedition.